All right, welcome to Double Dribble Bucks, the first podcast we're doing. This is an NBA podcast heavily focused on the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm one of your hosts, Seth Peterson, and across the screen here is Brett Sand.
Hello, everybody.
Brett, I hear you watched a lot of the All-Star festivities this weekend. Any insight? What do you got? What are your takeaways?
I did. I watched a lot of it. On Friday, I did not see any of the celebrity game. I think Friday night's pretty, I don't know, very like for the $1 million fan club, the people that pay a lot of money. I don't think broadcast TV people really care too much about what happens on Friday. I did see that they had a Draymond Green versus Kevin Hart 3-point shootout, which was pretty funny, I guess, to see.
And who won
Kind of
that?
surprising. I don't know. It's kind of funny.
It's funny because we don't care.
Well, exactly. The clip I did see is that they did tie, at least the first round. So after that, it was like I wasn't invested enough to care. I will say, as Indianapolis hosting so far, it seems like they've done a really good job. They did some piece with Larry Bird, Isaiah Thomas, and Reggie Miller that was really cool. The announcers are very obsessed with Tyrese Halliburton, which, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, it's just like, oh my God, like, just bring it down just a little bit. There's, and I think with our whole concept of very Bucks heavy, there's like no Bucks love this whole weekend. A little tiny bit for Dame repeating as a 3-point champion. But for Giannis, who was the number one vote getter, he's absolutely dominating in the sport. And they're just like, the only time I saw anybody talk to him was like literally the last interview before they tipped off for the game. I don't know. It's just pretty weird.
Yeah, first off, shout out to Wisconsin, Tyrese Halliburton, Oshkosh North kid.
That's right.
I saw 1 minute of the All-Star weekend, which was like 5 minutes ago when I was waiting for you to get back to the podcast deal. But actually what I saw was Giannis talking to Dame on the court as like during the warm-ups, and Giannis was mic'd up. And he was saying how they are the two oldest there. And so he was saying, hey, to win a championship, we have to beat a bunch of kids. And he seemed like kind of like legit serious about it, like competitive, like I'm not going to lose to a bunch of kids is kind of what I got out of it. So it was kind of cool to see. But also I didn't realize that he's the second oldest. I guess Dame being the oldest kind of, it doesn't really surprise me, but Giannis being the second oldest that does surprise me. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I heard him say that too, and it's definitely like an East versus West thing because on the West, he's definitely not the oldest. I mean, number one, you got LeBron going into age 40 season. It seems like everyone on the West is just old vets that are just, fantastic, but the East is all about the exciting young guys, and I think that is going to be a challenge. I think that's something that if I were Giannis, I'd think the same thing. It's like, okay, I appreciate that you're this young, exciting dude, but I'm a 2-time MVP. I've already won this thing. Like, let's see what it's like in a 7-game series with me, like, running into you over and over and over again, because I just don't think it's going to be something they want to sign up for.
That's right. I agree. And the All-Star break came at a good time for the Bucks because it's been tough. It's been a tough start to Doc's tenure as head coach. And after that last game, actually something I wanted to quick bring up. After that last game, Doc called out some of the players for being in Cabo early. And Giannis called some players out as well, essentially saying, who do we want it? Who's going to work hard enough to actually get this championship? There were no specific names, being called out by either of those two. Did you have anybody in mind as to like who they were talking about? And maybe they were talking about different people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been trying to think of who that could be because that is, really something. The fact that the coach calls it out and then Giannis calls it out. I mean, Giannis, that's something that he's kind of always done. From everything I know about Giannis, he's the guy that stays after the game. The infamous ladder gate when he was trying to get some shots in.
Yes.
Remember that? Early to shoot-arounds. I think in part of his comments were, if you need to come in early and shoot around before shoot around, you need to. So that was the only thing that like jumped out to me as like, okay, he's definitely calling out some people that maybe their shots just haven't been falling. And I find it hard to believe that he'd be calling out Dame. I just don't buy it. I think Dame is an ultimate competitor. He's just having some ups and downs, but he's still great. I mean, he's still fantastic. It's the casual Bucks fans that are freaking out about him right now. So I don't know. I mean, I think there could be something said for Beasley, who, despite having a fantastic year, is relying too much on a shot that when it's not falling, I think the last game it was something like where he's like 1 of 7 or 1 of 10. And it's like, all right, well, if you're supposed to be this big 3-point shooter that is going to help us get to this championship, you can't be doing that. Like, that's just, you have to be better than that. And, that was just the one name, I guess, if I had to throw one out, that was probably the one that I was thinking about. Everyone else just doesn't seem to, I don't know, fit the bill for someone to be called out this time.
Yeah, regarding Doc's comments, I think it was the Athletic article I read where they specifically said Jay Crowder was one of the guys, because Doc referred to a specific play. I think it was like the first play of the second half. So at least for that comment, I think Jay Crowder was one of the guys who wasn't, I forgot what exactly Doc said, but he wasn't hustling. His mind was in Cabo supposedly, which kind of makes sense. Jay Crowder might do that.
Quick thing on Jay Crowder. I heard the funniest thing, and I honestly can't remember if it was, I think it was maybe Greatest of All Talk, where they talked about how Jay Crowder looks like the create your own player in like a video game where you put on every possible accessory. Yes. He's got like the sleeves and the leg stuff, and it's just like, how much more stuff are you going to wear to play guy? I get he's older, but it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I wonder if it helps. Like, would he be a drastically different player if he just had like bare arms and legs? Maybe he's covering stuff up, regrets of his life. I don't know. I don't know what his arms and legs look like,
Yeah, maybe he's got a LaMelo situation where he decided to get a very unfortunate tattoo over his entire body, and the league's like, no, it's not going to go anymore.
It could be. Okay, well, let's jump into the first topic, which is kind of comparing Doc and AG and just kind of looking at, it's a disappointing start to Doc's tenure, like I mentioned, and kind of looking forward as to like what should we expect, and kind of look at some of the trends that have been going on the past few games. So to start off, one thing I noticed, or one thing I looked at, was under AG, the Bucks were 30-13, as we all know, but their win differential was number 1 in the league. And so basically their record was better than their actual play. And so there's like a projection when you look at that stat, they project like how many wins should have this team had, based on, I think they basically are looking at point differential. So we won 30 games. What do you think the projected wins actually was for that data?
I'm going to say, I'm going to go on a limb and say it was under 20. So I'm going to go with like 19.
Wow. That's actually an interesting answer. So your thought is the Bucks looked that poorly that it was only 19 wins. That's impressive. The answer is 25.7. So that was 4 to 5 wins less is what the expectation would be. And I think that projection was saying that if everything were to stay the same, that they would have finished 5th in the East was their projection, even though we were 2nd in the East at that time. So that, obviously not great. I don't think Bucks fans would be happy with that, but it is better than what we've seen the past 10 games. Interestingly, though, under Doc in the last 10 games, the Bucks have the worst win differential in the league. So the record is worse than the data would seem to think it should be. And that's only 10 games, so it's going to be a smaller number. But that projection was 4.3 wins instead of the 3. They're 3-7 in the past 10 games. Real quick, just your initial impressions comparing Griffin's tenure and Doc's tenure. Do you think the Bucks are, better or worse under one or the other, or like just maybe just general thoughts? What do you think?
So I'm gonna say maybe a little controversial, but I'm going to say that the Bucks are drastically better off with Doc, and I'm going to say why. Um, I was rooting for AG. I really was. Maybe it's part of my Bucks fandom, but it was like, all right, I like the idea of a coach that's been in the league for a while. You get a veteran team. Clearly, you got buy-in from the owners and the players, and this is going to be something that comes in. But the problem is, it just didn't seem like he, for lack of a better way of saying it, knew what he was doing. The job was too big for him. He had a scheme that I watched some video on where Brooke was not happy, and you could tell that Brooke was saying like, "All right, this is just not working." It was something along the lines of the way that AG wanted him to play was to if his guy was up on the 3-point line, he wanted him to go up there. But Brooks' natural instincts as a defensive player is, I'm not going up there. I'd rather let him take the shot or have somebody move over because I have to get down here. And sure enough, on the play, you hear AG shouting, "Get up!" Brooke goes up, and they throw it right down to the paint. And the guy has an easy layup, and Brooke is clearly upset. And so I think what was happening was if the Bucks organization had not made a change, I think this was going to start to become comically horrible. I think you would have seen an absolute implosion with this team. That to how much it affected Giannis, I don't know, but would I have been overly surprised to see people coming out and having huge problems with the team, demanding trades, creating some sort of environment that is not what the Bucks organization is looking for. So bringing someone like Doc, who it's like, yes, I understand he's got lots of problems, right? He has to get over his playoff record and some of these other things, but he's a veteran leader. People are listening to him. Early reports are Dame seems to love his coaching style. People seem to be ready to play for him. And 10 games, yeah. Did I want to see him come in and go 10-0? Obviously. But I think it's actually better that he had a losing record because it potentially is showing that he was trying things and trying to figure out what about the system was broken, because he has to figure this out. And then, you're right. The All-Star break came at the perfect time for him to be able to have this break despite having to coach in this game. But the Bucks don't play again until Friday. I'm hoping it's just like, all right, hopefully I figured some things out. He does have a great coaching staff. And I think maybe they can get through some of these problems now that he's there.
So what did you expect, or maybe what still do you expect from Doc coming in? What changes did you expect to see with the Bucks? Focus on the offense right now. Offensively,
the offense, I am slightly worried with the offense. We just have not looked as good as we have with that offense. I don't know what is particularly happening with that, but I think one of the things that I heard Doc say was something along the lines of like, as a team, we have to touch each other more. And what he was saying by that, he's like, you guys aren't high-fiving each other. You're not celebrating things. And I think that's noticeable. Even early in the season, I saw Giannis and Dame was trying to talk to Giannis, and Giannis was just like kind of dismissive of it. And I understand Giannis is a different player when he's playing. He's very much in the zone. But once Doc was there, you saw the two of them talking more. And it's a minor thing, but think back to the Green Bay Packers when they won the Super Bowl in 2011, and Charles Woodson was there. And if you remember this, every time they made a big defensive play, the players would go over and shake each other's hands. I don't know if you remember that, but it was like that type of thing where it's like, we're a unit, we're working together, we have a common thing that we're doing, and let's get on each other's side. I think it sounds so silly, but I think that is something that was missing. I think they were alienating each other, and I think that is the biggest thing that potentially Doc can bring to this team. And it seems so stupid to say, but I don't know. I think there's something there to it.
I agree with pretty much everything you're saying, and I totally agree. I don't know if you said this, but I think you pretty much were saying that the players kind of quit or never really even were on board with Griffin, because that game that you were referring to, I think, was the Toronto game, which was like game 4 maybe, and they blew us out.
Yes, Toronto game. Yep.
So I'm not sure they ever bought in to Griffin and what he wanted to do, and that's even though they were 30-13, it just didn't seem like they were there for their coach, like you said, like they weren't a united front. And so I agree with you that it does look better, and it's just interesting that that's not translating to wins. and that it translated to a 30-13 record. I mean, I would have expected, like you were saying, like 19, 19 and whatever that would be. So it is kind of confusing, but yeah, we tend to agree on kind of what we were seeing there. Regarding the offense and how good it was under Griffin, they were a 121.2 rating, which was fourth in the league. With Doc, it's 113.9, which is 21st in those 10 games. And it is kind of startling. Like, how does that happen? And I guess I'm wondering, are things headed in the right direction? And why is it off to a bad start? Do you have any ideas specifically on the offense, what's changed, and why we've taken such a step back?
So some of the things I've noticed on the offensive side, I've noticed we are passing more. Not as much isolation possessions where, whoever gets the ball right after half court, when AG was there, it was like, that's the person taking a shot. I can count on it. Like if Giannis is dribbling up and he passed to Beasley, Beasley's taking that shot. Like whether he's taking it right that second or he's going to dribble, that's what's happening. Like, and you look at that team and yeah, the offense was fourth, right? But look at how bad we were at defense. I mean, I know you have that stat and we're going to get to that in a second, but you have to put up a lot of points if you're giving up as many points as you had. I mean, you watch the game and Quick Trip is going to give you, 10 cents off if they score 95. Well, that was like a given in the third. Under Doc, that's not necessarily happening. And I think a lot of that is because the defense was so bad that the offense was just playing just to try to even keep up in some of these games. It wasn't because we were like unstoppable. It was the defense was so bad we had to score. And I think that's the biggest point for me.
Yeah, and that goes to the first thing I have in my notes, which what I looked up was pace. And it has dramatically changed under Doc. With Griffin, it was basically we had to win shootouts. And then, people were saying that. And then we were saying that's not how you're going to win a championship. And you look at Indiana, like no one's taking Indiana seriously, even though they're the number one offensive team, or at least they were at one point, if not now. And so, even though we were fourth in the league, every game was a shootout, and that just didn't seem like it was going to translate. I mean, it still doesn't. Like most people don't believe that that's going to translate to playoff basketball. And the stat I was looking at here is, so in regards to pace, the Bucks pace in October, November, December, January, 104, 101, 103, 102, which was top 5 every month. So every month under Griffin, top 5. Then we get Doc. February, it dropped to 99.4, 17th in the league. So we were top 5. Doc comes in 17th. So he definitely did some things to change the pace, on purpose, or at least I think so. I don't think that's just players kind of changing for 10 games. At least that's my guess. So that's pretty interesting, and that goes to what you were saying with your first thought on what's different. All right, the second thing I had in my notes was the shooting location. Like, where are we getting our shots off? And this was kind of interesting. It wasn't quite as dramatic, but we went from 11th in the league at shots at the rim at 34% to 26th in the league under Doc with 30% of our shots are at the rim. So I don't love that, and that's not something I thought. Is that something you noticed at all?
No, that's actually quite surprising. I was not expecting that because I've even noticed like Brooke, Brooke is a player that, is going to put up threes. He trusts his shot. You're going to live and die with it. And for the most part, you're fine. But he's been actually cutting to the basket way more than I've seen before. And of course you have Giannis, who's always getting most of his points there. And Bobby has been playing well on the offensive side. So that is very surprising. It's not something that I noticed at all. I know that there's a lot of 3-point shooters. AJ Green coming on has been awesome. I don't know how long that's going to last. I don't know how many minutes he's going to keep getting. But you take Green with Beasley and Dame, it's like, all right, well, that's pretty fantastic. But you still have a lot of players that should be close to the rim. So that's very surprising.
You bring up a good point. Green, he wasn't playing much under Griffin. Right? All of a sudden, Doc saw something in him, or I'm not sure what happened. But that's a really good point because our 3-point attempts have gone up from 38% to 41%. We were pretty high. I mean, we were 8th in the league under Griffin, and now we were 3rd in the league under Doc. But it is an increase. But to your point, maybe that's just playing Green. I mean, Green's just going to shoot threes, right? He's not going to basically go to the rim ever.
It's true. And one of my notes was, Griffin didn't play AJ Green hardly at all, but he played Ajax. And Doc comes in and completely changes that.
Yeah.
So either he thought, a possible thought was that, Griffin was like, all right, I need Ajax because I'm not worried about the offense. The defense needs to be fixed, and that's what Ajax is bringing to me. And then, Doc even early on said, hey, guess what? The defense is the problem. And that was one of the early things he said. He's like, you guys can play defense. This is a team that's set up to be defensive. And to his point, I'm sorry, I love Drew Holiday. He's a fantastic player, but you don't swap Drew out and we just plummet defensively. There was something else going on there. With Green coming on and some of the games he's been having, he's launching threes and he's hitting them, and that's pretty fantastic. So maybe that is, if we're going up in our 3-point percentage, then that makes more sense. I think we need to find a little more balance. Being in the bottom part of the league like that is not ideal. I know that's kind of the league now, but it's one of the reasons I think the Nuggets do so well is, there's no answer for Jokic being down there when they're playing the West because nobody wants to take him on. Well, why can't we have that with Brook and Giannis down there? I feel like that's something that we've done before.
Yeah. This stat was interesting to me, and because Boston, I didn't look it up, but Boston maybe is number 1 in the league with threes. It seems like they take a ton of threes.
I could see that.
And I don't love that because just when you don't have it, you lose a game, and it's hard to recover from a bad shooting night if you're taking a crazy amount of 3-point attempts. So if that's your offense, sometimes it's just like you're going to lose, and what are you going to do about it? And so that's what scares me a little bit. I'd prefer more balance. I want shots at the rim. Obviously Giannis. I want Dame to drive. So they both do that. I don't think they've changed their game much, but just in general, it scares me a little bit if we're top 3-point attempts, even though that's the way it's going. And maybe I should look back in 2021, what were we? I guess I don't know. But yeah, that was interesting. I didn't expect that. The other thing I put down here was our transition offense. We've been able to get into transition offense a little bit more with Doc, but what's kind of weird, and maybe it's just a small sample size, but our points per play in transition is terrible the past 10 games. It's 27th in the league. Under Griffin, we were 11th in the league. And so I wonder if that's just players just happen to not do as well the past 10 games, or do you think there's some transition offense strategy that has changed?
I think a lot of the stats that you're going to see under Doc, you're going to have to kind of take with a grain of salt because, everything that I'm seeing with Doc has to pass my eye test. Because I think in those 10 games that he came in knowing that he had 10 games for the All-Star game. I think he was just trying a lot of stuff because the problem is I think there's a lot of people that are going to say, all right, we'll give you the time before the All-Star game, but we are going to have one of the biggest spotlights on us coming out of this All-Star break. And if we go 3-7 in these next 10 games, then it's going to start to be, holy crap, there's something really wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that it's hard for me to comment on that because, from the eye test, I feel like we were making decent shots. It seemed like we were running better plays. We had a better sense of urgency there. The stats aren't backing it up, but I'm a little too early to jump all over that one just because I think, it's too much transition going on right now.
Yeah. Well, the dramatic thing that we saw there was a difference in pace. That the stats back up, the eye test backs it up. That's definitely a big change that's happened.
Yes.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens in the next 10 games on offense. Flipping to defense, we have seen an obvious change, right? But what things have you noticed on defense that are different under Doc?
So first of all, way more energy. I'm seeing a lot of energy from this team. You can see when you're watching the game if guys are having energy when they play defense. Look at the All-Star game right now. These guys just don't play defense, and they shouldn't. They shouldn't in this game. But I was starting to get that watching a Bucks game. It was like, all right, what the heck is going on here? Like, you just don't seem like you care. But with the switch to Doc, I'm seeing a lot more double teams, which was something that was
Mm-hmm.
significantly lacking under Griffin. And then it looks like he almost switched into some sort of man zone scheme. Not a full zone, but definitely more to it because the way that I was seeing players, move off and into these double team like trap moments, I was not seeing under Griffin at all. And I think that goes to my earlier point with Brooks' frustration of being on the man and being where he was supposed to be. Brooks, like, that doesn't make sense for me to be out there to exhaust that energy to get out when as soon as I do that, the guy's either going to go right past me or pass it past me. So we have to just let him shoot. And look, if he makes two in a row, then we change it up. But until that happens, let me play where I'm supposed to play. That's some of the stuff that stood out to me immediately. And that was, I don't know, that energy is something I definitely saw. And they, as a team, we're like, I'm sick of being talked about as though we don't play defense and we're a bad defensive team, and that was part of it. But I definitely feel like it wasn't just, that man coverage that you see where guys are just chasing each other around and one guy is totally getting burned and you see him running around the court all day. It was like there was an actual scheme that was taking place that seemed to really fit the guys out there.
Yeah, I agree. I love the double teaming that they're doing. The kind of the late help. It's like it doesn't come right away, but if I think in the Denver game, Jokic had it. He's holding the ball for 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then Giannis comes over, and they end up getting a steal in that possession. So kind of like the late help, end of the shot clock, trap kind of stuff. That definitely has been noticeable, and I think it's been great. And a stat to back that up is we are forcing more turnovers. We were last in the league under Griffin, and we're 10th in the league under Doc. So that definitely seems to be one difference that's pretty apparent. Another thing,
and I think that's a huge difference too, by the way, because we didn't bring Dame in to play defense. I mean, yeah, obviously you play defense, but we brought him in to be this offensive weapon, which he has become, and I truly believe he's just continuing to get better and better. And you haven't even had Middleton, who is one of the best mid-range shooters in the league that, the casual fans just don't see at all. I mean, it's been very unfortunate that he's been battling these injuries, but it's like if our defense can improve with what we have right now, I mean, this is on paper is setting up for great success. We just have to see the execution.
Yeah. The other obvious difference is limiting transition, right? The transition defense was awful under Griffin. And I think that's because the buyers never bought in. I think that was an effort thing personally. But that definitely has changed pretty dramatically from last in the league to, in the last 10 games under Doc, third in the league. So they essentially went from worst to best in transition defense. So yeah, big change there, and I think that has been pretty obvious watching the games as well.
Well, it's interesting to say that too, because I've actually been noticing the Bucks getting a lot more offensive rebounds, which there was something that was like, you can't, if you're going to be a defensive, if you're going to have a defensive scheme, it's either going to be we're getting the offensive rebounds and our transition defense is going to suffer because of it, but we're going to really make sure that you're not getting these easy rebounds from us. Or you're going to say, I don't care about the offensive rebound, I'm getting back on defense. The problem was with Griffin, they were doing none of it. It was like they weren't getting the rebound, and then all of a sudden the other team is down there doing a layup. It's like, where did everybody go? They're hanging out at half court because nobody got that rebound, and there's nobody back there to stop somebody. And now I'm seeing a little bit of both, and I think it's, Giannis and Brook are not going to run back there on transition D. It's just not, that's just not their game. So you try for the rebound if you think it's a position, and these other guys have to get back because you're going to lose the transition battle for the fast guards. It's not Jokic getting down there before everyone else getting the layup. No, it's Murray. It's going to be all these quick guys. So it's like, yeah, send our guards back there. if Giannis is hanging around the rim, have him and Brooks stay down there. If they get the rebound, they get the rebound. They're both strong enough and big enough, put it back up. But I don't know. You got to figure it out. You can't be bad at both. And I think that's finally something that I saw from Doc that I was super happy about.
A fun fact regarding that, the Bucks rank last in the percentage of opponent rebounds that led to a transition play. That's not too surprising. The fun fact is last year we were 29th. And during the Bud years, we were always in the bottom third. So like this team, this core that we have has just never done that. Like they've always been pretty bad at giving up transition plays on opponent rebounds. So I guess there is some personnel and history with like Bud's system that has fallen into that. So it's maybe not completely Griffin's fault. It's like he inherited that problem, apparently. All right. So another thing I noticed here was the defensive rebounding. We improved from 15th in the league to 7th in the league on defensive rebounding. And it's probably one reason that our offense is getting into transition a little bit more. So that seems like a good thing. I haven't necessarily noticed that, and that's maybe also an effort thing too. Maybe that's just players trying harder.
It could be. And I think there's something to potentially the scheme, the effort, all that kind of stuff, because the big thing I noticed with the rebounding is with Bobby Portis. So when Griffin was there, Bobby's Bobby, right? He's going to be, you live and die with the way that Brooks shoots a three. You're going to live and die with Bobby Portis doing Bobby Portis things. I mean, he has every possibility of getting thrown out of a game, but he'll get the team and the crowd fired up because of it. He might get hot one night, shooting threes or, doing whatever. He might have a really cold day where he's doing nothing, but that's Bobby, right? When Griffin was there, Bobby was fighting for rebounds with his own players. The number of times I saw him rip a rebound out of Brooks' hand, Giannis's hand, any of these types of players, it was like, what are you doing? I don't get that. But the Denver game that I watched very closely, he never did that. He knew his role, got the rebound, passed it on. If someone else was going for it, he backed away. It was like, okay, there's something definitely there. And I think part of it, if there is truth to the fact that Brooke hated the defensive system so much, I'm sure Bobby was as well. Bobby was very outspoken, saying that things need to be much better. That could be a big part of it, and that's his way of showing his frustration. But my final note on Bobby here is, I think Bobby Portis, under the right leadership, could become like a Dennis Rodman type player. And I'm surprised that more people haven't done that. I know it's the new way that the league is, where you have to be able to play offense and defense, but when he's playing really well on defense, he is fantastic. He can fight for these rebounds. He's big, he's tall. Why nobody likes that game that Rodman had? I mean Rodman notoriously would have 0 points and 28 rebounds.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you necessarily have to go that route, but Bobby should be like, I'm the rebound guy. Like everyone that's near me, I'm getting it. It is my thing. I'm getting 20 rebounds a night. If I get some points with it, that's great. But this is my job. This is what I'm doing, because he's also an enforcer. I mean, look at the times that anyone starts to get in a fight. Bobby's the guy that's right there going, let's go. Like, he's not even like slowly backing down. He has this smile on his face. Like, I know that I could win. And so like, if this is what you want to do, that's fine. We'll do it. And it gets me that Rodman attitude where it's like, all right, like if that's what you want to do right now, let's do it. But I worry that he's too focused on, I have to do a little bit of everything. And I would really like to see him focus so much more on the defense.
Yeah, with Bobby, he definitely gives that energy that we need and that spark. And he is the enforcer. He's standing up to anybody and everybody. And so even if he's not playing well, it's almost worth, like it is worth having someone like that on the team who's on the court, not just Thanasis on the bench doing that.
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, he definitely serves that purpose. And to your point, he's a great rebounder. The other thing is he's a scorer. And so, I mean, I see him as kind of a sixth guy, not completely, but I mean, he'll come off the bench and he'll be he'll put up, a quick 10 points, hit a three or two, give him a post up, and he's pretty good at that. I didn't look at his numbers at all, but he is a scorer. Like, he's good at that. The defense, in terms of defending a player, I'd say is questionable. I think a lot of people would say he's pretty bad, but he definitely is the best rebounder, one of the best rebounders on the team. Which you can't say about Lopez, who's like 7'1" or whatever. Like, why is Lopez not a better rebounder? I've never understood that.
Yeah, his age is really starting to show, I think, a little bit. I mean, the back surgeries and stuff like that. And he's still, when you watch Rook throw up a three, it is a long process. I mean, it is, compared to anybody else, you're like, oh my gosh, this guy, like, how is he even getting this shot off? Because it seems like it's been taking him 5 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's something like when he was in Brooklyn and New Jersey, he only played by the rim. That was all he did. And then, he had other coaches that started having him play out. And I think that was maybe part of my mindset with Bobby. It's like, yeah, he is a scorer. He's not going to be the Rodman points. But why can't you be the rebound guy and then do like the quick putbacks? Like, that's fine. And then what you do is you stretch that position later, because when they're like, oh, Bobby's out at three, okay, well, he's going to make that all day, but he's also absolutely cleaning the glass on both ends. That just completely changes what you have to do as a team to guard against that guy. But right now, I mean, yeah, he's minor defensive liability. He is going to get the rebounds. He's going to score, but it's like, I don't know, you got to have a better purpose.
Yeah. Well, real quick, the last note that I had about the defense is that under Griffin, opposing teams were shooting 35% from three. Under Doc, opposing teams are shooting 41%. I'm guessing this is just an unlucky 10-game stretch, but curious if you've seen any. Are we giving up more open threes? I guess I didn't know where to look up that information. On the eye test, are you seeing a difference, or do you think it's just teams just happen to be hitting shots the past 10 games?
I think it's something that it's just a bad streak, unfortunately. I'm not seeing anything that's preventing us from, having better coverage out there. I think it's a lot of teams, you're going to have the Charlotte Hornets that are going to be like, all right, if we're going to have any shot at this game, we have to start shooting threes. And I don't know the stats from that game. But there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be like, all right, if we're going to have to beat the Bucks, we're going to have to score. And it's a 3-point league right now. And I think that was potentially a unlucky stretch. I don't think there was many plays where it was just like, can somebody please cover the guy? But it's just going to be, I mean, the All-Star game tonight, if you watch the very first quarter, Halliburton had 15 points in the first couple minutes because his first 5 shots were made threes. First 5 shots of the game. And it's like, okay, well, you don't see that, right? But it happens. We all know what happens. So you can have any team in the league and have their guy get hot, and what are you supposed to do about it? It's like, so from the eye test, I didn't see anything that showed that there was a reason why we are giving up more threes. It's surprising that it's that much, but we also had a rough stretch. I mean, those were rough 10 games that we played.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on with Doc, and I think offline, is that the term? Offline, we talked about this. The Doc on the Bill Simmons show, he talked about, like, before he was going to be a coach, like there was no talk about firing Griffin. Like, we didn't know any of this. He's talking to Bill Simmons about the Bucks and saying how he wanted to see more 2-man game with Giannis and Dame. I assume he's thinking about more pick and roll between the two of them. And maybe it's a combination. I mean, you could have dribble handoffs, inside out play. There's multiple ways, but especially in today's NBA, I'm assuming he's thinking we need more pick and roll between Giannis and Dame. I guess maybe real quick, have you seen more of that or not?
I feel like I have not seen that yet. I have seen more pick and rolls, believe it or not, with Dame and Brooke.
Yes.
Which is surprising.
Yep.
Which I've been seeing. It's like, okay. So I don't know if there's more to the story of maybe why Giannis and Dame are not doing this. Is this something that is one of them feels like that's not part of their game and they, have to find a better way to deal with that. But they're both professionals and they both want to win. And so I can't imagine that's the story, but yeah, I don't know. Brooke and Dame seem to be doing the pick and roll more and more. And I think that maybe there was some miscommunication on who the other person that was supposed to be doing those pick and rolls with Dame is. Maybe he can get that clarified. But, I guess it's nice to see somebody doing it. It is helping a little bit.
Yeah, it didn't help.
Doing it.
Didn't help at the end of the game against the Grizzlies, but it usually helps.
Yes, usually.
Looking at the stats, Dame is actually 5th in the league in number of possessions per game as the ball handler for pick and roll. So throughout the season, and that's a total season stat. So he's been doing pick and rolls, but like you said, I think it's mostly with Brooke and maybe Portis, whoever else. It hasn't been a ton with Giannis. And Dame's pretty good. He gets a point per possession. It's not great. It's not elite, but that's good. It's worth doing. But Giannis is elite, 1.15 points per possession, and that's either ball handler or roller for Giannis. The thing is, he just doesn't do it a ton. He only is two possessions per game as the roller. I mean, here's a 7-foot guy who you can't defend, and he's getting an awesome efficiency on that. I just wish that they did it more. And if you have Dame on the other end of that, it just seems like you're going to make life easier for Dame. Either Dame's going to get a more wide open shot compared to doing a pick and roll with Brooke, or give it to Giannis. Giannis has a one-on-one, 7 feet from the room. That's a dunk. So I do want to see more of that. Doc said he wanted to see more of that. So that's like the number one thing I'm looking for. Like, I want to see that. There's really no reason that Giannis isn't doing it more. That's one of the more efficient ways he gets points. Besides transition, I think that's the most efficient way for him to get points. And he's doing it some, but we're losing games. Like, so I just don't see why it's not happening at least a little bit more.
Do you think there's any coaching philosophy into that as far as like, unless the world ends, the Bucks are making the playoffs, right? We just are battling for what seed we're going to be.
Yeah.
Do you think there's something to like, let's not show that too much in the regular season because we're going to rely on it in the playoffs? I don't know that I even believe that could be a thing because it's like you have to use these regular season games, if anything, as practice and see how this works and try some things. And you can't save it all for the playoffs. So it's impossible that they're not going to show us at all. But I wonder if there's anything to that, that they're using it with different players and then feel like it's just going to hit, or if maybe, you think back to like early Giannis when Jason Kidd was there, bringing up the idea of, Giannis, you should be the ball handler. You should be bringing it up sometimes, be, slashing from the top of the key. That was definitely something he brought in there that was not part of what Giannis initially probably thought he was bringing. Maybe it's the same type of thing with Doc, where it's like, well, we want you to do these pick and rolls, and with this certain player, this is how this is going to work. And maybe he's just slowly getting used to it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing out some ideas, but it's definitely something that I want to see improve in these next half of the season.
Maybe there's something to that. I mean, I've heard that before. But I mean, it's modern day NBA. It's like there's pick and rolls all the time. I would see maybe in the playoffs you're going to do it more. You're not going to like just kill it to like the Knicks do it basically every play.
Right.
So yeah, maybe there is something to that. But it seems like there's an awful number of possessions where Giannis is just taking it in a half court set, taking it from the top of the key, just kind of on his own, finding his way to the rim, which, works way more than you would expect it to work. And that's probably why it keeps happening. I would like to just replace a few of those possessions with some sort of set, with like, let's do the pick and roll instead, and I guess that's the main my main takeaway is just there's a little bit too much of Giannis on his own
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. My take is I think it's difficult for Giannis to shift his game. He's done this for 10 years now or whatever it's been, and he's been incredible, and he's won 2 MVPs and a championship, and he's still scoring and just he's awesome. But I do think it's better for the team for him to have a little bit less usage, give more usage to Dame, and play more as a team because that's kind of I wouldn't say they're doing like your turn, my turn, but it is a bit more isolation than I would want to see.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. This has been Giannis's game. It's been working. You're not going to completely change all that kind of stuff, but yeah, it is happening a lot. I think that as great as Chris Middleton is, as great as Drew Holiday, Dame is a different player. Drew and Chris were not on the top 75 list. Dame is completely different, and they just have to find a way to work together. And it's got to be, Giannis, like, you have an actual elite player over there, so like it doesn't have to always be on you. And I think some of that too is like, it's the NBA in general, but I definitely watch way more Bucks games than anything else. But the number of times that you especially see this team arguing with the refs of how did I not get that call? How did I not get that call?
Mm.
It's like, I get it. I totally get it. Yes, you probably should have gotten that call there, and this is the way that you play your game. You need to set that up early. But if you're not getting them, stop arguing and wasting that extra time, because that time does add up to, 15 seconds a game that you're arguing with the ref after the play about a call, and that makes a difference in the NBA. And it's like, if you're going to do this, find out early. You're getting the call, you're not getting the call, adjust your game, or just be like, look, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to hope I get the call, and if I don't, then that's the type of game they're calling today. But, it's too much just complaining about it after the fact. You're not going to get it every time. It's not going to work.
That actually does worry me a little bit with Dame's game and how that's going to translate to the play. I mean, he's been in the playoffs. He's had multiple game-winning shots in the playoffs. It's not like he hasn't done it before. He got to the Western Conference Championship. But watching him play and go to the rim and kind of rely on getting fouled, and then when, like you said, when he doesn't get the call, he's arguing. But they don't call that as often in the playoffs. They let you get away with a lot more. Kind of like the James Harden situation. He's like definitely way worse in the playoffs, and I think it's probably at least partially because of how he plays. He gets a lot of fouls. So I think that's a great part of Dame's game is how, it's efficient to get a lot of free throws. But I'm a little worried come playoff time that he's going to be relying on those fouls and he's not going to get them.
Yeah, and I hope that is something that comes with the veteran leadership of the coaching team to be able to say, like, because look, Dame played with Terry Stotts for a while. Stotts was a great coach, but I believe that Portland was his first head coaching job. With Doc, he's coached on multiple teams, coached for a long time. He's got guys on his staff that have coached as head coaches in the league. They bring in a lot of experience to be able to take someone over and be like, look, man, that's not going to fly all the time. Like, this is what we have to change about this, because in the long run, this is the type of stuff you can't rely on those calls. You have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to do things a certain way. And I hope those voices are loud enough for them to hear it.
Definitely. To close off this Doc conversation, is it just as simple, these last 10 games, is it just as simple as Dame was hurt a couple games, Middleton was hurt most of them, and for the games that Dame played, he was bad? Is it that simple?
I hope so. I sure hope so. Again, I'm going to call out the casual Bucks fans that are going to say, all right, you should still be able to win with Giannis. It's like, okay, let me tell you something right now. Like, it's not the same team with, like, we have a good team, right? But when you take away an all-star starting point guard in Damian Lillard and a previous all-star, one of the best mid-range shooters in Chris Middleton, that is going to significantly impact your team. Like, Giannis can't do the whole thing on himself. It just the way it works. You go back to Jordan. Jordan struggled until he got teammates that were more capable of helping him so that he could do his thing. But you can't just have Michael Jordan and, the class of '98 from Arrowhead as his team and expect them to win. Like, it's just not enough. Um, so I'm hoping it's as simple as that. I'd like to see, Chris hurting his ankle. That sucked. It didn't look great. But I think they're also being very cautious with him. They know, again, this is a playoff team. So Chris just needs to make sure he gets enough of those rehab minutes back in so that when the playoffs start, he's ready to rock and we can hopefully avoid injuries in the actual playoffs. And then, that's the thing with Dame too, is this guy is putting up great stats, but he reaches another level in front of everyone's eyes. It goes from, Damian Lillard is a top 5 player. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about Damian Lillard. Oh yeah, I guess he's playing, to all of a sudden, is this guy the greatest player in the league? And it just happens all of a sudden. And it's just like, he can't miss. And he's unstoppable, and it's like, that's what I'm looking forward to. I know we haven't seen it yet. I know he has admitted that it's not there yet, but I think it's coming, and this is going to be a very tough team if those things line up. So maybe it's the stupid optimist that I am, but I'm hoping it's as simple as, just a couple things going the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty incredible threesome there. Compare it to Phoenix, KD, Book, and Beal. I'd rather have Giannis stay in Middleton.
I would too.
And I don't care what team Allen's on. It doesn't matter. Even though he's shooting incredibly well. I wish that was there last year.
What happened there? Jeez.
Yeah. Okay, so I had a bunch for Pat Connaughton. Let's do that next time.
Okay. I do want to throw out one more thing, though. Especially watching the Denver game. Just a quick call out on the officiating here. If we can't get the officials to figure out the bullshit calls that come in these games, I'm going to really lose my mind. I get that you call Giannis for carrying because it happens. But to call it in the fourth quarter was absolutely ridiculous. It's like, I get in the game, you have the other team, the other coaches, they're the ones that are in the ear of the officiating. And they're saying, you got to call this, what he's doing, and finally they call it. But, like, a call like carrying, you're either calling it or you're not. But, like, to pick and choose when this is happening is so frustrating to be watching. It's like there are people that carry it all the time. And to have it come in when it does is a problem. Some of these are so blatant that you have to call them. But Giannis is not dribbling any different than he normally does, and to call it when he did was just like unbelievable. I just could not understand the thought process there, and I just had to get that off my chest.
What frustrates me most with the replay is when they go to the replay, they can look at this over and over and over again, and they get it wrong. Like,
yes.
That to me is like, yeah. I can't get over that. And I forgot what the play was. It just happened recently. I know what it was. There was a loose ball, and who was it? Someone pushed Connaughton out of the way to get the ball. Okay.
Yes.
They called a foul on the player who pushed Connaughton initially. Then they challenged the call, went to replay. You can see in the replay that the player, it was a loose ball. The player, do you remember who it was? I keep saying the player.
I think it was Denver, and I think it was Jokic. I know the play, and I think that was the game. I'm not going to cut in anymore, but I think this is the one you're talking.
Okay, let's just say it was Jokic.
Okay.
So Jokic pushes. So before he kind of shoulders Connaughton out of the way, and right before that, he touches the loose ball. He touches it, but he doesn't have possession of it. It's a loose ball. He reaches out, touches the ball to try and, gather it, but it's kind of, it bounces on the ground, essentially, kind of in front of both of them. He totally shoulders his whole body into Connaughton. Connaughton goes flying as Connaughton's reaching for the ball, by the way. Gets shouldered out of the way, goes to the ground, and that was the initial call was foul, which was the correct call. They went to replay and they reversed the call, said it was a foul on Connaughton, and they said it was because the offensive player had possession of the ball.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He did not have possession. It's like, what's possession? Just touching the ball? That was mind-boggling.
That was horrible, and Marcus Johnson was losing his mind on that play because he goes, I don't even know what possession in this league is anymore. He goes, that's possession. He's like, I'm completely lost. He's like, I'm just an old man watching the game because if that's what you call it, he's like, I've lost. He's like, almost like I can't do this job if that's the call you're going to make. And I completely agree. It was like, you had the call correct. The way that you just called it, and that's why I think it was Jokic, because it was an established player that is the type of player that gets those calls, but it's like, come on, what are you doing on that one? There's no way you could look at yourself in the mirror and say that you got that right at the end. There's no way.
No, yeah, that's what I hate the most. And that happens occasionally where it's just like it happens in football too, and it's like you're looking at the replay and you're still getting it wrong. Like, let's just get rid of the replay if that's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay, well, maybe to wrap up this podcast, I do have a fun fact that I fell into looking at Pat Connaughton's stats. So we won't get into the Pat stuff. But I found this interesting lineup note. Pat Bev has only played 4 games. Not many games. He's only played 59 minutes in those 4 games. Okay, so not much time on the court for Pat Bev really to even have various lineups. He's been in 13 lineups. 12 of them have been less than 10 possessions. But, that makes sense. He's only played an hour of basketball time. But the other lineup has played 51 possessions, which is crazy that they've played that much together. The other thing is it happens to be one of Connaughton's worst lineups with over 50 possessions. So Connaughton's in there with Pat Bev. It's Portis, Giannis, Connaughton, AJ Green, and Pat Bev. It's only 51 possessions. It's not a ton, but it has a rating of negative 25.7. Like, why? I assume the coaches look at all this stuff, right? I mean, they have 10 assistant coaches on the bench, all wearing the same long sleeve shirt, whatever that is. It's like one of those guys is doing a much better job looking at every crazy advanced stat. I'm just looking at cleaning the glass for an hour. Okay, they're diving into this stuff. How does that happen? And it just intuitively to me, AJ Green and Pat Bev, that doesn't even make sense. Just initially, why is that the backcourt?
So what's funny about that stat is that I'm not surprised at all that's the lineup, and I say that because I'll watch the game and I'll go, "What is this lineup?" And that's always the lineup. It's like I'm looking around going, "What are you doing right now?" This is the weirdest lineup that you could possibly pick, and it's like, I guess I don't understand the thought process, and maybe that's, a little teaser for the Pat conversation is Pat's getting a raw deal here. Pat is getting out, he's playing with a bunch of, incompatible pieces and expecting to do something, and he's like, I don't even know where I fit in this. You got 3 guards that are all just like I don't know where a place is here. They're all sitting in 3-point land waiting for the shot. Of course you're not going to get a rebound. You're not going to do anything. I hate that lineup, and I'm not surprised that's the one it is. I've seen it a couple times, and it just blows my mind. I don't understand it.
So they don't play till Friday? Is that what you said?
Next game's on Friday.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look for that. Portis, Giannis, Pat, AJ Green, Pat Bev.
Yeah.
Let's see if that lineup is out on the floor and how they do. Okay, well, yeah, that was a good first hour. You can find us at DoubleDribbleBucks at gmail.com. You can email us at DoubleDribbleBucks at gmail.com. Send us your questions, all of you listeners. We will answer them on the pod. We also have a Twitter account, but I forgot the handle. Maybe we'll have to plug that next time.
Yeah, next time. I probably won't tweet until Friday, so that'll be all right.
That's true. Yeah, anything else you got for the fans?
No, I am looking forward to some big changes, though. try to be optimistic coming out of this All-Star weekend. Dame is the 3-point champ. That's got to be good. And I think Giannis is needing a weekend where he kind of hangs out with some people that are passionate about basketball, and that's what this weekend is. So I'm hoping there's some big takeaways, and we see some big firepower coming out of this week.
Excellent. All right. Well, good talking to you. And until next time, go Bucks.